immerse yourself into the world of Creepy Man. He's waiting for you.
My name is Emily, and when I was 17, I had already seen my fair share of life's darker side. Bouncing from one foster home to another, I thought I knew what fear was, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that one night in Oakland. It's a night that still haunts me, even all these years later. You see, I wasn't just afraid, I was terrified in a way I'd never been before. And it all started with something as simple as a long white gown at the top of a creaky staircase. One night, I went to the bathroom that was right in front of the stairs on the first floor. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye, a shadow on the wall. At first I thought it was mine, but as I moved, the shadow didn't. It stood still, unnervingly human in shape, yet slightly distorted, with arms too long and a head tilted at an unnatural angle. I blinked, and it was gone. Shaking it off as my imagination, I climbed the stairs. As I was about to walk back upstairs, I saw the bottom of a lady's long, white gown at the top of the stairs. I thought it was the foster mom or sister, and asked if they wanted me to leave the light on in the bathroom for them. No response. The gown just turned and went down the hallway. I thought it must have been my foster sister sleepwalking, because she was still little, like 10 or 11, and did that sometimes. Before heading to bed, I passed by a small storage room we rarely used. The door was ajar, and a faint tapping noise came from inside. I hesitated, but pushed the door open slightly. The room was pitch black, except for a faint sliver of moonlight. As I reached to turn on the light, the tapping stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths, too close for comfort. My heart racing, I quickly shut the door and bolted to my room. I went upstairs and peeked in the parents' room. They were both snoring. As I turned to leave their room, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. It was the reflection of the woman in the white gown, standing behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just an empty, silent room. As I hurried back to my room, the hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching impossibly far. The light at the end flickered, and I felt a presence behind me, heavy and oppressive. I turned to look, and for a split second I saw her. Her hollow eyes staring right at me from the shadows. She was gone in an instant, but the air felt colder, suffocating. I hurried back to our room, where my sister was dead asleep in her bed, wearing a Raiders t-shirt. As I closed our door, I noticed it wouldn't latch. I leaned against the door, but as I did, I heard faint whispers, soft, incoherent voices coming from within the walls. They seemed to grow louder, like a crowd closing in on me. Covering my ears didn't help. The whispers were inside my head now, each word soaked in menace. Suddenly the whispers stopped, replaced by a loud dragging sound. It was as if something heavy was being pulled across the attic floor directly above me. I tried again to latch the door, but something was pushing against it from the other side. Suddenly, the door flew open, and I felt a cold breeze rush past me, extinguishing the hallway light. As I tried to calm myself, I glanced at the door again. Deep claw marks appeared, scratching into the wood as if an invisible force was carving them out. I watched in horror as the marks spelled out leave. I froze in terror as I heard faint, echoing footsteps coming from the stairs. slowly descending toward our room. The footsteps stopped, but my attention was drawn to a picture on the wall, a framed photo of the family that lived here before us. It was turning on its own, the glass fogging up. Words began to appear, as if written by an unseen finger. "You're not safe." Before I could react, the faint sound of a lullaby began to play. It was an old tune, scratchy and distorted, as though it came from a broken music box. My heart thudded painfully as I noticed the sound wasn't coming from outside, but from my foster sister's closet. Against every instinct, I approached the closet and slowly opened the door. Inside, hanging from the ceiling, was a dusty, ancient cradle gently rocking back and forth. There was nothing in it, but the music stopped abruptly the moment I touched it. I quickly shut the door and leaned against it, holding my breath, praying whatever it was would go away. But then the sound of soft humming filled the room, coming from the corner where my sister slept. I slowly turned my head and saw a shadowy figure standing by my sister's bed, gently stroking her hair. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure turned its head slowly to face me, revealing hollow black eyes. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Shaking, I turned on the light and went to the small mirror on the wall. My breath caught as words began to appear, written as if by an invisible hand. "She belongs to me." The letters dripped as though they were written in blood. I wiped the mirror frantically, but the words wouldn't disappear. In that moment, my sister suddenly stirred, and the figure vanished, leaving behind only the sound of her soft breathing. I rushed to her side and shook her awake, desperate to make sure she was okay. She opened her eyes, groggy and confused. I told her everything was fine, but I could still feel the presence lingering in the room, watching us. We spent the rest of the night huddled together in bed, listening to the sounds of the house creaking, but nothing else happened. The next morning, I found a single white feather lying at the top of the stairs, where I had first seen the gown. As I stared at it, a sudden chill ran through me. I picked it up, and for a brief second, I felt as if something brushed against my arm, something cold and clammy. Later that day, I checked my arm where I had felt something brush against me. There was a faint mark, a small hand-shaped bruise. It was cold to the touch, and no amount of scrubbing made it go away. I never spoke about that night again, but I could never shake the feeling that whatever it was still there, waiting. To this day, every time I hear the floor creak or see a white gown, I feel that same cold dread creeping up my spine. So that's my story, something that I've carried with me for years, a memory that refuses to fade. Even now, I sometimes wonder what really happened that night. Was it just my imagination? Or did I truly encounter something from beyond? I guess I'll never know for sure.
My name is Mark, and I've always considered myself a rational person, someone who doesn't buy into tales of the supernatural or things that go bump in the night. Ghosts were just stories for campfires, something to keep kids from staying out too late. That's what I used to believe, at least. But then something happened to me when I was 5 years old, something I couldn't explain, and to this day, it still sends shivers down my spine. This isn't one of those creepy tales you hear from a friend of a friend. This is something that happened to me, personally, and it's haunted me ever since. It's a story about my grandmother, a bedtime story, and something far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. I've never told this story to many people, but today I'm sharing it with you. Maybe you'll believe it, maybe you won't. But once you hear what happened, you'll never forget it. Let me take you back to that night when everything changed. That night, I was a 5-year-old kid, excited for my usual bedtime story. I ran up to my parents, eager to hear something fun and exciting, but they were both busy with their office work, typing away on their laptops. "Not tonight, honey. We're really busy," my mom said, without even looking up. My dad just nodded in agreement. My heart sank. They never said no before. I turned around and walked slowly toward my bedroom, feeling sad and forgotten. As I passed through the living room, I noticed my grandmother sitting in her usual chair, knitting. She looked up and saw how upset I was. "Why so sad, my dear?" she asked, her voice warm and comforting. I told her how my parents were too busy to tell me a story. She smiled softly and said, "Would you like me to tell you a story instead?" I nodded eagerly, and she followed me into my room. I crawled into bed, and my grandmother sat at the foot of it. Before my grandmother started the story, she leaned closer, her usually warm eyes now dim and serious. "Stories are powerful," she said softly. "Some tales, when told, leave a door open, and not all who pass through that door come in peace." Her words hung heavy in the air, and a strange draft crept into the room, rushing against the nape of my neck. I shivered, but nodded, eager to hear more. She began her story by telling me about her childhood in a small village. "There was a legend in my village," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "No one went out after dark because of the ghostly figure that roamed the streets at night." As she described the ghostly figure in her village, my grandmother's tone shifted. It was as though she was no longer narrating a tale, but reliving a memory. My heart started to race as she continued. "One night, a worker from the local theater was late getting home. It was after midnight, and the streets were empty. He rode his motorbike through the village, trying to get home as fast as possible. He was halfway home when he heard something, a strange noise, like footsteps following him. He stopped his motorbike and looked around, but there was no one there. As my grandmother paused, I heard a faint noise. It sounded like footsteps. Soft and deliberate, just outside my room. I froze, staring at the door. "Did you hear that, Grandma?" I whispered. "Hear what, dear?" she asked, her face unreadable. But there it was again, louder this time, like someone dragging their feet down the hallway. My grandmother tilted her head, her expression strangely calm. "It's just the house settling," she said, though her voice carried an edge. "Houses, like people, remember things." Saying that, she continued the story. He could feel a presence behind him, though. Just as he was about to start his bike again, he heard a soft voice calling his name. It was eerie, distant at first, but then it grew closer. It was as if the voice was right next to his ear, whispering in the dead of night. He turned to find no one there, but suddenly the wind picked up and the air grew colder. He tried to restart the motorbike, but it wouldn't budge. Something unseen seemed to grip the bike's wheels, holding him back. He turned around, and there it was, the ghostly figure, standing just a few feet away. When the worker saw the figure, it didn't just stand there, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. It reached out, its bony fingers stretching longer and longer, as if trying to pull him into the darkness. Its face was pale, its eyes hollow, and its body draped in a tattered robe. The worker tried to scream, but no sound came out. The next day, his body was found at the bottom of the well near an old, abandoned villa. No one knew how he got there, but everyone in the village whispered that the ghost had claimed another victim. The air in my room seemed to grow colder. My grandmother continued, her eyes glinting in the dim light. I couldn't take it anymore. My whole body was trembling. I shouted, "Stop! Grandma, I don't want to hear anymore." She looked at me with a strange smile, but didn't say anything. I buried myself under the covers, too terrified to look at her again. I eventually drifted off to sleep, but only for a while. Something woke me in the middle of the night. A faint humming, low and melodic. I peeked out from under the covers to see the rocking chair was empty. The hum seemed to come from the hallway. I tiptoed to the door and opened it just a crack. The hallway was dark, but I could see the faint outline of a figure standing near the living room. "Grandma," I called out, my voice trembling. The figure turned slightly, and I saw that it wasn't her. The face was hollow, the eyes dark and empty. Its lips moved as if humming, but no sound came from it now. I slammed the door and jumped back into bed, pulling the blanket over my head. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard the creak of the rocking chair again. Gathering my courage, I walked to the living room. There it was, moving slowly back and forth. "Grandma," I whispered again. The chair stopped abruptly, but no one was sitting in it. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a shadow darted across the room. I ran back to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. The next morning, I woke up to my mom calling my name. I jumped out of bed and ran to her. "Why did you send Grandma to tell me that scary story?" I asked, feeling upset. My mom looked at me, confused. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "Grandma scared me last night with a story about a ghost in her village," I insisted. My mom froze, her face turning pale. She walked over to the living room and pointed at an old photograph hanging on the wall. "Is this the grandmother you're talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, confused. My mom looked at me with wide eyes. "That's my mother," she whispered. "She died long before you were born. That's the same story she used to tell me when I was a child." I couldn't believe what she was saying. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the photo. The woman who had sat at the edge of my bed last night, telling me that horrifying story, was already dead. From that day on, I couldn't look at her photograph without feeling a chill run down my spine. I never saw her again after that night, but the rocking chair would occasionally creak on its own, even years later. I sometimes feel her presence when I walk past that old rocking chair. And that's the end of my story.
Hello everyone, I'm Emily, and I've always been drawn to the unexplained, the shadows that linger just beyond our understanding, the whispers of stories that haunt our past. Today, I want to share a chilling tale that has been etched into my mind ever since I heard it from one of my closest friends, Ryan. It's a story about fear, the unknown, and the lingering presence of something that shouldn't exist in our world. So, gather around as I take you through the story of a trip gone wrong, of 8 friends, a mysterious figure, and a night filled with terror that would change their lives forever. A group of 8 co-workers, including Ryan, went on a trip to a hill station over a long weekend. They came back as different people, silent, withdrawn, and constantly looking over their shoulders like something was watching them. They don't talk about it much, and whenever they do, their eyes grow distant, as if they're reliving the nightmare. Here's what I pieced together from what Ryan could remember. It was supposed to be a fun trip. 8 of them, Ryan, Nick, Sarah, Adam, Mia, Kevin, Anna, and David, decided to take 2 cars and drive up to a secluded hill station. They'd booked a few rooms in a wooden resort nestled deep in the forest. The plan was simple. Relax, catch the sunrise at a viewpoint, and trek to a nearby waterfall. They reached the resort late at night. The place was eerily quiet, with only the sounds of the forest breaking the silence. They were all tired from the drive, so they went to sleep early, eager to start the next day fresh. But that night, something strange happened. Ryan told me that David, one of the quieter ones in the group, stepped out around 2 a.m. for a smoke. While everyone else was fast asleep, David stood by the trees at the edge of the resort's grounds. That's when he saw it. A ghostly figure standing between the trees, its shape barely visible, but distinctly human. He didn't describe much about its appearance, only that its presence filled him with dread. He rushed back into his room, locking the door behind him. He didn't tell anyone what he saw, probably thinking it was his imagination. The next morning, they all woke up and went to catch the sunrise. Ryan said it was a beautiful sight, but David was acting strange, jumpy, constantly looking around like he was expecting something to happen. He brushed it off when they asked him, and they continued with their plans to trek to the waterfall. When they reached the waterfall, they were in awe. The water was crystal clear, the surrounding forest lush and serene. They spent hours there, taking photos, splashing in them and just relaxing. But David couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At one point, while they were all in the water, he screamed, pointing toward the forest. Ryan said David saw the same ghostly figure again, this time standing just at the edge of the trees, watching them. The others rushed over, but by the time they got there, the figure had vanished. Everyone tried to calm him down, but David was terrified. They spent the rest of the day trying to enjoy themselves, but the mood had shifted. Ryan said he felt a strange unease settle over the group, though no one could explain why. They decided to head back to the resort in the evening, but something even stranger happened. After driving for about an hour, one of the cars noticed that David was missing. He was supposed to be in the back seat, but he wasn't there. Panic set in. They turned the car around and drove back toward the waterfall, thinking he must have gotten out without them noticing. By the time they found him walking along the road, it was already getting dark. David looked dazed, like he didn't know how he'd gotten out of the car. They picked him up and started driving again, but now they were running late. They stopped at a small shop along the roadside to ask for help finding accommodation for the night. The shopkeeper took one look at them and warned them to leave the area immediately. He said strange things happened around there at night, especially near the woods, but they didn't have much choice. There was nowhere else to go, so they pitched tents nearby, deciding to camp out until morning. While sitting together in their tent, they went through the photos they had taken that day. That's when they saw it. In one of the pictures by the waterfall, there was a shadowy figure standing behind them, clear as day. Ryan said everyone froze when they saw it. The figure wasn't part of the group. It was the same thing David had seen. As the group huddles together in their tent, the lantern inside begins to flicker. Kevin notices a shadow on the tent wall that doesn't belong to any of them. It grows larger, taking the shape of a long, spindly figure with clawed hands. When Kevin shines his flashlight towards it, the shadow moves away, but the tent fabric bulges inward as though something is pressing against it, scratching faintly. Before they could react, a loud scream echoed through the forest. It was like nothing they had ever heard before. Inhuman, bone-chilling. The sound surrounded them, coming from all directions. They packed up in a frenzy, but just as they were about to leave, one of the cars had a flat tire. There was no way they were staying any longer, so all 8 of them crammed into one car and sped off into the night. As they drove, the screams seemed to follow them, getting louder and more frantic. At one point, they all saw it, the ghostly figure standing on the side of the road staring at them as they passed. No one said a word. They just kept driving, faster and faster. The road begins to shift. The headlights illuminate endless loops of the same stretch of forest, as if they're driving in circles. Ryan notices that even though they're speeding, the odometer remains stuck. Suddenly, the ghostly figure appears in the middle of the road, forcing them to swerve. When they stop, they realize they're back at the campsite they fled from, despite never turning around. They finally saw a police patrol van up ahead and pulled over, desperate for help. They told the officers what had happened, and to their surprise, the police didn't seem shocked. They said others had reported similar sightings in the area. The police escorted them to the nearest station, but by then, all their phones were dead. They couldn't even call their families to let them they were safe. At the police station, something else happened. Ryan notices his reflection in the station's large window, but instead of his own image, he sees a ghostly figure staring back at him from his reflection. As he gasps and alerts the others, the reflection vanishes, leaving everyone on edge. Seconds later, the glass shatters inexplicably, cutting off the power in the station. Ryan said the last thing he recalled was seeing the ghostly figure again, standing outside the station window, just staring at them. After that, it was a blur. They don't know what happened next, but whatever it was, it left a permanent mark on all of them. A week later, they all returned to work, but they were different. Ryan won't talk about it anymore, and neither will the others. It's like they're haunted by something they can't explain, constantly on edge, eyes darting to empty corners, afraid of something only they can see. Whatever happened on that trip, it changed them. And I don't think they'll ever be the same again. And there you have it. A journey into the unknown that forever changed the lives of 8 friends. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones we live ourselves.
Hey there, my name is Alex. I never believed in ghosts, spirits, or black magic. They were just stories people told to scare each other. But that all changed one night. I was standing on the balcony of my apartment on the 15th floor, enjoying a cigarette. The view was peaceful, until I noticed something strange. There was a flicker of light coming from the woods near the apartment complex. It looked like a fire. My curiosity got the better of me. At first, I thought it might be campers or kids playing with fireworks. But as I squinted and focused on the scene, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were figures, men, dressed in strange, tattered clothes. Their faces were painted, and they seemed to be performing some kind of ritual around the fire. My heart started to race. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Something about the whole scene felt wrong. Without thinking, I grabbed my jacket and decided to head over there. Maybe it was just some prank, but if it wasn't, I wanted to make sure no one was getting hurt. As I walked through the dark, silent streets, my gut twisted with each step. When I reached the edge of the woods, the air felt thick. There was a strange smell, like burning herbs and something rotten. I hid behind a tree, peeking through the branches. The men were still there, chanting in some language I couldn't understand. They didn't notice me, but the sense of dread grew stronger with every second. Before I knew it, I shouted, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The men stopped and looked straight at me. Panic shot through me, but I didn't back down. "I'm calling the police," I yelled. Most of them scattered into the woods like frightened animals. But one man, a tall figure in black robes, didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me with dark, angry eyes. Then he mumbled something under his breath and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tried to distract myself by watching TV. As I sat down on the couch, flipping through channels, the screen suddenly turned to static. At first, I thought it was just a signal issue, but then I saw something in the static. It looked like a face, distorted, twisted, and staring right at me. Before I could process it, the TV switched off on its own. The room was eerily silent, except for a faint whisper that seemed to be coming from behind me. I kept thinking about that man, his eyes, his voice. I convinced myself it was just a weird encounter, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't leave. Around 3 a.m., I heard a loud banging at my front door. My heart pounded as I went to check, but when I opened it, there was no one there. The hallway was empty. Shaken, I went to the kitchen to grab some water. My hands were trembling as I opened the fridge. I closed the door, and that's when I saw her. A figure, pale, with sunken eyes and a hollow expression, was standing in the kitchen doorway, staring straight at me. I dropped the glass, and it shattered on the floor. I ran back to my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I crawled under the blankets, shaking with fear. One night, the faint melody crept into the room as I was working late in my living room, a haunting lullaby that sent chills down my spine. My fingers froze over the keyboard. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It echoed within the apartment, soft yet unshakably eerie. I got up, my pulse quickening as I followed the tune. Each step toward the bathroom made the air feel heavier, colder. The door was slightly ajar, and the light inside flickered. I pushed it open. She was there. The ghostly figure sat in the bathtub, her back hunched and her head tilted unnaturally. The tune flowed from her, haunting and hypnotic. Her hollow eyes locked onto mine, and my breath caught. Before I could react, the tub filled with a thick, black liquid that spilled over the edges, crawling across the tiled floor like it had a life of its own. Panic surged through me. I stumbled backward, slammed the door shut and locked it. The melody grew louder, her voice now twisted and menacing. My heart pounded as I backed away, the sound seeping through the door like a taunt I couldn't escape. For the next 3 days, strange things kept happening. My lights would flicker, objects would move on their own, and I constantly felt like I was being watched. The worst part was the whispering, soft, indecipherable voices, always coming from the direction I wasn't looking. One night, the phone's buzz shattered the silence, pulling me from a restless sleep. Groggily, I reached for it on the nightstand. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Static filled my ear, sharp and crackling, followed by a long, suffocating pause. Then it came. A distorted version of my own voice, low and warped. "You shouldn't have seen us." The words felt like a dagger, cold and deliberate. My chest tightened. "Who is this?" I croaked, but the line had already gone dead. Before I could process it, the phone vibrated violently in my hand. A notification appeared. A photo. My trembling fingers opened it. It was me. I was standing in the woods, though I hadn't been near any in weeks. My face was eerily still, almost lifeless. But in the background, barely visible among the shadows, she lingered. Her hollow eyes glared from the trees, faint but unmistakable. The phone slipped from my hands as dread coiled around me. The photo pulsed faintly on the screen like it was alive, mocking me in the suffocating silence. I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I called my best friend from India and told him everything. He listened quietly and then suggested something that made me pause. You need to visit the Mehandipur Balaji temple in India. It's known for dealing with spirits and black magic. Trust me, it's your only option, he said. Desperate, I booked a flight to India. On my flight to India, I thought I'd finally escaped whatever was haunting me. But halfway through the flight, as I was drifting in and out of sleep, I felt something. I opened my eyes and there she was, standing at the front of the aisle, her head tilted to the side, staring directly at me. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. No one else seemed to notice her. I blinked, hoping she would disappear, but she didn't. She just stood there unmoving, watching me until the flight attendants walked by, and she vanished into thin air. The journey was a blur, but the moment I stepped foot in the temple, I knew this place was different. There were hundreds of people, many of them screaming, crying, or visibly distressed. The energy in the air was heavy, almost suffocating. I was directed to a priest who listened to my story without blinking. The priest performed a ritual, murmuring ancient mantras while waving incense around me. I felt a sudden chill behind me, and when I turned my head slightly, I caught a glimpse of the ghostly figure again. She was standing just behind me, staring at the priest with hatred in her eyes. The priest chanted louder, his voice trembling, and suddenly she vanished. "You're free now," the priest said, handing me 3 black balls as prasad. "Take these with you, but remember, when you leave the temple, no matter what you hear, do not look back. The spirit will try to call you, but if you turn around, it will possess you again and you won't be able to escape." As I walked out of the temple, I tried to keep calm. The air outside felt lighter, but I could still feel the weight of the warning hanging over me. Then, just as I passed the last gate, I heard it. A voice, my name. It was unmistakable, coming from inside the temple. I froze in my tracks, every hair on my body standing on end. My heart was pounding. The voice called my name again, more urgent this time. I wanted to turn around so badly, but I remembered the priest's warning. I kept walking, faster and faster, ignoring the voice. It called out one last time, louder, more desperate. I broke into a run and didn't stop until I was far away from the temple. I didn't look back, not once, and since that day I haven't heard or seen anything strange, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear that voice in my dreams, calling my name. I'll never forget that moment in the temple, the moment I almost turned back, and I know if I ever do, she'll be waiting. And there you have it, the harrowing tale of that night, a night that forever changed my perception of reality and the unknown. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something chilling? Or do you have a story from someone else that left you questioning what's real? Please share your encounters with us. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support is what keeps us going and allows us to bring more spine-tingling stories to you. Thank you for being part of our community, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are just waiting to be told. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open. Bye.